going out of control. I'm gonna make a video of you making the video.
How's this?
Zach,
So-
can you see my, I don't know if you can see my pee-pee. How long do you think this will be?
I don't know. 10 minutes.
Okay. Hopefully I don't get burned in 10 minutos.
What's up, everybody? Paul Rezai here. As you can see, I have my shirt off. So does Bill. This is the only way that he would comply with my request to do this video. So he wants to get vitamin D. So you guys should be getting some vitamin D too. Anyway, I have some logic. I've come up with a conclusion. And I want to share my logic with you guys. Hear what you have to say. And I want to tell Bill my ideas. That way he can kind of give his thoughts. I haven't told him what I'm going to go over. What I'm about to go over may already exist, meaning this may be a thing that people have thought of before. Maybe not. I haven't heard of anyone explaining it in the way that I'm about to do. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you've heard this already before. Okay, Bill, you ready?
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to give you an analogy, okay? I'm going to give you a scenario.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to try to be as coherent as I can. And you can chime in too, Miss Esme. Let me know where it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Okay, so this is hypothetical. Okay, so imagine you have a room. And in this room, you have a man. And the man's sitting at a table. And there's a piece of paper in front of him. He's got a pen and he's got the paper. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Now, let's say it's your will and your desire, let's say, to stand up, right? I'm switching gears here for just a moment. Let's say you want to get up,
Okay.
okay? And there's no reason why you wouldn't get up.
Okay.
What would you expect to happen?
I don't know if this is a trick, but I want to say that I would just stand up.
Okay, right. If you want to get up, you'd probably just get up. Probably, right?
I think so.
Okay. So in this scenario, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So in this scenario, there's a man in a room. There's a piece of paper. He has a pen. It's the man's will and desire to put a dot on the paper. He's fully capable of putting the dot on the paper. There's nothing obstructing him from putting this dot on the paper. Okay?
Okay.
That's one room. In another room, there's a machine with a piece of paper. This machine can put the same exact dot on a paper, okay? Except the difference between the machine and the man is the machine will arbitrarily create a percentage on whether or not it will put a dot on the paper.
Like a probability?
Probability. So it'll randomly select a probability. Let's just say choose a probability randomly.
22%.
Okay, so now the machine has in it 22% chance that it will put a dot, and it will execute on that percentage.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a 22% chance it will put a dot. There's a 78% chance it will not put a dot.
That was really good math.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay.
Hey, real quick, when do you think of stuff like that?
Ah! Just got to make sure that...
He thought he was losing the audience.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Get with it,
Bring
people.
him right back in.
Mhm.
When do you think of this kind of stuff, man?
I can explain how I created this
We'll get to it afterwards.
after this if
Okay,
this
perfect.
video doesn't run too long.
Yep.
So these are the two scenarios. You have a man in a room. He can create a dot. It's his will. It's his desire. There's nothing preventing him from putting the dot. In the other room, there is a machine. It's going to randomly select a percentage, and it will execute on that percentage on whether or not it puts a dot. Now here you are, and you know that you're about to be given a piece of paper. And you're going to have to decide which room that paper came from. Did it come from the room that the man was in, or did it come from the room that the machine was in?
Mm-hmm.
The stakes are high, because if you get it right, you get $1 billion.
I've always wanted $1 billion. I'm sorry.
If you get it wrong, then you do not get the $1 billion, and you lose all of your assets, all of your money, your house, everything.
Stakes are high, Paul.
Stakes are high.
Okay. Not
So-
T-bone stakes either.
You're presented with a piece of paper. Okay?
Okay.
There's no way to know which room it came from, for sure. There's no way to look at the paper and say, oh, this paper was in the room with the man. You can't look at the dot and say, this dot looks like a man created it. The dots are exactly the same. Now, you're given a piece of paper. This paper is blank. If you had to put your money on it, if you had in that scenario, would you say that the paper came from the room with the machine or the room with the man?
Damn, I think you lost me at the end. I'm given a blank piece of paper. There's no dot on it?
There's no dot.
And then I have to decide if the paper came from room 1 or 2?
Right. Room 1 has the man, room
Right.
2 has the machine.
And-
The man's will is to put the dot. There's nothing stopping him from putting the dot.
Oh, okay.
It's his desire.
Oh, gotcha.
Room 2 is the machine, and the machine arbitrarily chooses a percentage and will execute on that percentage. And you're given a piece of paper that has no dot. What would you say? Did it come from the room with the machine or the room with the man?
Can I ask a clarification
Yes,
question?
sure, go ahead.
So whenever you say that the man...
Make sure they can hear you.
Yes, sir. So whenever you say, Paul, so you want me to pretend like you're over there?
Whatever.
So, Paul, whenever you say that the man, it's his will, it's his desire, is that the same way, is that your way of saying that more or less there's almost 100% stop looking at me, look at the camera.
Yes, sir.
Saying that there's 100% or as close as you can get to 100% probability that he's going to put that dot on the paper?
Probably. I mean, you would think that if it's his will and it's his desire and there's nothing to stop him from putting the dot, maybe there's an earthquake. Maybe something falls out of the ceiling and breaks his face.
Yeah?
Who knows? But
Okay.
you know that there's a man. Actually, no, because there's nothing stopping him from creating the dot. So I guess to answer your question, as far as I can imagine, it would be 100% or as close to 100% as I can think.
And the computer in the other room, I know you said it's arbitrarily, randomly picking out a probability. And
A little louder, Bill.
sorry, and the probability is going anywhere from 0 to 100%, and there's nothing weighting it being more closely to the 100%, or it's
Completely
just
random.
There's an equally random chance between 1% and 99%.
Yes, sir.
I would assume that if I was handed a blank sheet of paper, that I would assume that it came from the room with the machine, because there would be a higher probability that it would select a lower probability than the guy at 99%.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if
Okay.
that's right, but
You are
put me on
incorrect,
this-
Bill, and you've lost this intellectual battle here, and that's it. No. Okay, so you choose the machine if there's no dot. Okay, now let's say that you're presented with a piece of paper. This time it has a dot.
Mhm.
Would you say that this paper came from the room with the man, whose desire and will was to put the dot, nothing stopping him from doing so, or from the machine, where arbitrarily again chooses a percentage and executes on that percentage? You now have a dot on the paper. Where do you put your money?
Man, I don't know why, but I think this is different.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to say there's an equal probability between the two, but I couldn't tell you why. If there's a dot on the paper, intuitively I want to say that it's more likely to come from the room with the guy, room 1, but I think, yeah, I guess if I had to put money on it, I would say room 1, but I think somebody who's really good at probability and statistics would come in and say, no, there's actually an equal
A
probability.
little louder, Bill.
Oh, God. There's actually an equal probability of it being from both rooms. Kind of like when you, I think what if that's right, I think it's the same reason as like if you flip a coin and you have a 50-50 chance of it landing on heads or tails, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it landed on heads 20 times in a row, somebody would say, oh, it's more likely to be tails, but that's not actually true. There's still a 50-50% chance. I think some kind of logic there applies to what we're talking about here, but I'm not entirely sure.
You might be right, Bill.
Oh.
But I don't think it is. If there's anybody that's watching this that
Don't listen
understands
to him.
probabilities, I'm not an expert in probabilities, but I would think that the man, like I said, let's just say for argument's sake it's 100%. So you know there's a 100% chance that the man will create a dot. In the other room, there's not. So if you had to put money on it, I would say that I would go with the man.
Right.
Let me know if that logic is flawed. Because if it is flawed, then my next point doesn't make any sense at
You
all.
wasted all this time.
I wasted all
But
this
we're going
time.
to pretend like you didn't. Let's keep going.
Okay, so this is an analogy.
All right.
Okay, the dot represents matter. The dot represents stuff. It could be atoms, it could be quarks, electrons, chemical compounds, just anything physical in the world. Okay?
Okay.
So, just like in the analogy, we don't know where the dot came from. We don't know where stuff came from. But we have a choice. We can choose to believe that stuff came from a creator, something that willingly chose to make matter, or we can say that it was randomly generated. Okay? So, I believe in this way of thinking that just the fact that there's stuff here, just like when you get presented with a paper and you see that dot, we can choose to think, of course it's not 100%, but we can rationally, logically conclude that this was probably made willfully on purpose with intent versus just randomly generated. So again, the dot represents matter. The man represents a creator, aka God. The machine represents some kind of random system. Because in general, those are your two choices. You can either choose to believe that the earth, the sun, particles, the periodic table, all of this that we experience was willfully created on purpose, which I think would be 100%. Or let's just say that that's not true. You can choose to believe that it was randomly created. But with that perspective comes the uncertainty of maybe it wouldn't be. So if you had to put your money on it, in my opinion, based off this logic, if you had to say, is there a God or is there not a God? Of course, I'm not saying this is 100%. I'm just saying if you had to put your money on it, I think there'd be a higher probability that there would be a God that created matter. And I can explain to you how I came up with this. If you want, it might give some more clarity. But first, do you have anything to say about what I just said? Or did I?
Well, I haven't really put much thought into it, into your analogy. I mean, these kind of things you have to think about quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of presuppositions going into that, you know?
Totally. And that's all that we can. For example, if I'm getting that paper, you're basically assuming is what it is. You're right. You're because there's no way to know for sure. You can't look behind the door. There's no way to know. Just like in our current existence, there's no way to know where stuff came from. All we're doing is just assuming.
Is that, well, yeah,
Explain.
kind of.
Explain.
Well, just because we don't know something today doesn't mean we won't know something
That's
tomorrow,
true.
right? Like
Yeah.
any assumptions we have today may not be an assumption tomorrow.
Okay, so in this scenario, let's say one day you can know where the paper came from. Till then, if you had to put your money on it. So for example, you're presented with a piece of paper, it has a dot, you have to choose. Did it come from that room or room 1 or room 2? Maybe in a week they'll know where it came from. But until then, if you had to put your money on it, like I said. Do you want me to explain how I came up with that scenario?
Sure.
Okay, so let me see how long this video is. Dang, it's kind of long, but it's all right. We'll keep going.
Yeah.
Hopefully, hey, if you guys got this far, comment crazy monkey style and let us know that you got this far in the video.
That's good. Put them in every couple minutes, Paul.
Keep them coming.
That attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
Can you guys hear him? Comment below. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, okay, so this is how I thought of that scenario. I came up with another scenario, and this one's probably, I'm not claiming credit for this other one. I think there's similar scenarios like this. But on a dry erase board, I basically drew a line down the middle, and I had my client point towards one box, gave him a dry erase marker, and I said, do something random. Okay? So then they would just, let's say, make some scribbles, right? Then in the other box, I said, create something. So then they created something, they drew something. Now, if I were to show you those two images, and I would say which one was willfully created and which one was done randomly, I think for the most part, you would be able to choose which one was willfully created almost 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say I had you close your eyes and you said you were doing something random, and you open your eyes, it might look just like the Mona Lisa. You just go like this and you open your eyes and say, whoa, I drew a perfect house. That could happen. Probably not. Right. So if you had to put your money on it, if you saw something that was ordered, intelligible, discernible, you would probably say that it was willfully created. Now, this is another analogy. When you look around at our experience, you have subatomic particles, you have nuclear weak, nuclear strong forces, you have gravity, you have electromagnetism, you have the sun creating radiation, you have the Earth's core shielding us with a magnetic field, you have all these minute details that are working. Like, science can only work if it's consistent. So when I look around at the world, to me, it's like that picture that's discernible. It's not random. Of course, this could be random. Maybe. Who knows? Again, like you said, maybe in a year or whatever, however long it takes, we might find out which is the case. Mm-hmm. But for now, if you had to put your money on it, if you're looking at two pictures, you look at one and it looks like somebody took a long time to draw it perfectly. Wow, look at that. Oh, I can tell here, this is a house. I can tell, obviously. Look, oh, and then this other one, scribble. Now, the scribble represents randomness, which, of course, again, to what I'm saying is you might accidentally draw something. Yeah. But to relate that into our current experience, if you look around at life, everything operating what appears through design, intent, willfully created, to me, I think if you had to put your money on it, it would be more intelligent to say that there was a creator versus it was random. Now, this is the interesting thing. When I was doing this, experiment or this thing that I created, about 50% of the time, I pointed them towards the dry erase board and I gave them a dry erase marker and I said, do something random, and something interesting happened. They would do something random that didn't involve them putting anything on the board. So for example, I said, do something random, and my client would pick up her leg. And then that got me thinking, wow, it's not just the fact that our world is ordered. It's the fact that it even exists. Because in the random scenario, there's a probability that nothing even gets onto the board. So if you want to, again, place your money, was what you experienced willfully created, or was it by accident? To me, it makes more sense logically that it was done on purpose. Of course, this isn't proof. This isn't 100% evidence. Maybe it's all just one big coincidence. Maybe it's all just random. But we're talking probabilities. We're talking about logic, reason. And we're trying to assume, like you said, since we don't know. Tell me, gaps? Does it not make any sense?
No, I mean, the way you've laid it out, it makes sense. But I think there are gaps that I'm probably not. I'm not the person to identify those gaps. But like I said before, there's a lot of suppositions that go into that kind of limit the context and will lead somebody listening to this to think, oh, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. There has to be a God, right? Everything is too perfect, If there's a dot on the paper, more than likely it's got to be a God, because everything is so perfect, right? But again, I think there's a lot of presuppositions that go into that in your analogy, they shift the observer over in that direction, or the listener over in that direction. You know what I mean?
I do. And I think it does that because it's true.
Yeah.
So, for example, if
For
you
sure.
look at a car,
Yeah.
you know, I can say, did this car have a designer?
Right.
And then say, well, you're leading that. Well, it's because the car did have a designer.
Right.
In our experience, anything that's complex, in general, there was some kind of mind behind it. I do want to say something real quick, and I'm gonna wrap up this video because it's long. Somebody might say that there's a popular theory, the multiverse theory. You see it all over the place now. Now, let's say that the machine is spitting out papers. Some of them have dots, some of them don't. So the multiverse says some universes exist, some don't, some will fall apart. But eventually you're going to get one that works, and we happen to be in this universe that's, from a probability standpoint, so minute, but since we find ourselves here, we can only conclude that it had to be on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Even in that scenario, there's still a machine that's spitting out the papers. There's still some kind of mechanism that's spitting out universes. So even if that's true, you still have to think, well, how is there a mechanism that's spitting out infinite universes? Thanks for your thoughts, Bill. If you guys have any kind of thoughts, I really want to hear it. Let me know again if anyone else has thought of it. Do you have any comments, Miss Esme?
I do.
No. We don't get to hear you. All right, guys.
I'm done.
Do you want to
I
get it?
don't.
Do you want to be behind?
Well, I think where
You wanna come
you're
sit in the
well, no.
have to.
I
It's
don't want
part
my
of it.
face up there.
Okay.
But I think where you are going to get controversial in this setting that you're exposing is when you call that order and that force God.
Okay. Let me.
Because
no.
I might, and mind you, I'm a believer. I
Yeah.
call myself a Christian Catholic.
Mhm.
But I think for people who don't believe that there is something bigger out there that is our creator, I think they can call it nature, and nature has laws, and nature has order, and nature has, like you mentioned, the sun and the tides and the things like that. So that's where it's going to get tricky, because some of us recognize that, and still some of us might say, but that doesn't mean there's a designer out there. That means there is nature, and that's how things work in our universe, at least, you know, because like you mentioned, there's forces to pull the planets, and there, you know,
No, I'm glad
things
that
like
I'm
that.
glad
But
that you're saying that.
I think the part where it gets tricky and controversial is that you call it God, because when you call that it's tied up to other traditions and other things that,
Yes.
and then we have to talk about religion, and people are not
Okay.
so open to talk about that. So I think that's when everything gets hairy and commingled, and people won't recognize that. And I think on my end, I have to recognize that and respect that, because
Okay,
not
so-
everybody will believe in what I believe.
I think that's why he created the analogy, though, was to get rid of the God part and turn it into machine and man. That way he could try to separate, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were trying to separate God out from the side and then just say, okay, if we just take this at face value and we have a person and we have a machine, which one's more probable? Is that right?
Yes, and also to your point, you brought up a great point, and that's the problem that people have, I think, with these conversations, is they immediately start to project out.
Yeah.
And when I use the word God for the purpose of this video, it's strictly from a creator sense. I'm not saying God is good. I'm not saying God of the Bible is true. I'm not saying God of Islam is true. I'm just saying a creator.
Right.
The creator is God. That's the word. In today's day and age, we've demonized that word. People use a lot of other words that basically mean the same thing. One of the, I guess, challenges is if you say, well, it's nature. Well, nature is what is, but how did what is come into being? So that would be the equivalent of saying, well, it's just the dot. Well, still the dot had to come into existence somehow, meaning the sun, the laws of nature, all those things that you described. If somebody says, well, it's just nature, well, yes, it's nature, but how did nature arise? Because did it arise through intentional creation, or did it arise randomly, or was it always here? But we know now through science that it wasn't always here, because they can use scientific experiments to see that the universe was created. I think it's like, what, 16 billion years ago, something like that. And there's a lot of evidence for that if you guys don't know. But they used to believe that the universe was eternal. And if you even said that there was a beginning to the universe, they thought that you were some kind of a religious fanatic. But now, like always, in my experience, all science does is just catch up with what is, and it just validates what the people said so long ago. They said in the beginning God created the universe, essentially, and
The heavens and earth, or heaven and earth.
but I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's true. Because
Yeah.
when I'm talking about, let's say, this
And I'm
specific
glad you clarified.
this
'cause
instance, people on, well, God, why would he let people die? It doesn't, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about just real specific. Because I think before you even get there, first you have to come up with, okay, is there a creator? Is this, or is it random? Then from there, then you can start to learn more. Then you can say, okay, is there morality? Is there objective morality? Is God good? What are the attributes of God if God does exist? But that is definitely one of the big challenges. It's one of the challenges from somebody who doesn't believe in God to hear what I'm saying, because they'll automatically start projecting out, well, my sister died of cancer. That can't, I'm not talking about any of that. I'm not saying God is good. I'm not saying God, I'm not even getting into that. I'm just saying, does God exist? I use that word God in a strictly creator sense. And it also holds people back that are religious too. Because the moment that I tell them about the scenario that I give them, they automatically start to project out all their validations on why God is good and why, let's say, the Bible is true. And I'm like, I'm not even getting into all of that. I'm just trying to be real specific about just the fact that there's stuff. Why is there stuff? That's it. I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm just saying I think that just the fact that there's stuff sways the needle of probability over to God. I don't know how far, but it just sways it just enough to where if you did have to put all your money on it, if I had to, I would put my money on intentional creation. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, that's good for the video because it's pretty long. God bless you all. No, you say it.
God,
Now that I made you a believer.
Now that I'm a believer, may God bless you all for now and eternity into the afterlife.
Peace.
Peace.